strange. It's been a good year for labor in the State House. You know, it's hard to feel like that when you're in the middle of it because nothing ever goes according to plan. But when you step back, it's been a pretty good year. We have two big pieces of legislation that passed. We just passed on Thursday, home care workers won the right to organize. And we have, you know, the numbers, you'll be familiar with this, but the numbers are really substantial. We have right now about 7,000 or so members in the Vermont State Labor Council, and there's about, this unit of home care workers is about 6,000 or 7,000, something like that. So this is a substantial increase. And with that's something that AFL-CIO and SEIU were both working on, passing the legislation in the State House. And I'm out of AFT's, my home shop, and we are also working on child care organizing legislation that will be another few thousand members. That's going to pass out of the Senate in a couple of days from now. Exactly, it's a long slog, and this is year 3 for the child care organizing bill in the legislature. You know, we did a lot of polarizing last year and created a dynamic where some of the leadership in the state legislature really were looking for ways to be good to labor. You know, and so this dynamic that I feel like we helped to create went a long way toward creating an environment in which AFL-CIO and SEIU were able to come in and do a really good job themselves, but not face the kind of hostility that we faced. And so those are out, and we're going to double the number of members in the State Labor Council in Vermont, and child care workers are going to win the right to organize at the end of this year. Maybe it'll take us till January of next year. So those are two great things that have happened. And we passed a fair share bill, which is sort of the opposite of right to work. You know, right to work says you can't bargain for an agency fee or fair share, and we passed a fair share bill that would mandate that everybody, all public workers in the state, pay fair share. So that's a good thing. You know, that is not to be sneezed at. But I'll tell you, it is also, you do come into contact with exactly how illiterate our elected officials are with regard to labor, the labor world, when you do this. It is a hair-raising experience. Because when they crack those books open, and that's the hazard, you're not going to win anything if you don't try anything bold. You're not going to get anything bold if you don't try anything bold. But you do, it is a high-risk, high-reward strategy when you open up labor laws and start making substantial changes, because it is a Pandora's box, and it is just not under your control what's going to fly out of it. And so in the Senate, we had folks offering amendments and getting serious debate on the floor saying, okay, we'll pass this bill, but we'll limit agency fees to 50% of the dues. Well, this would be, all the AFT shops have agency fee, all the AFL-CIO shops have agency fee. There's some other unions where maybe only 20% of their shops have agency fee that would have been covered by this. So that would have been disastrous for us. You say we have agency fee, we have an audit, it's determined, it's 80, 85%. This law would have said we can only collect 50%. It would have been horrifying to us. But then you might have other unions that don't have any agency fee at all, and it would be, still a great thing for capacity building for them, but that's the kind of hair-raising thing. And you say, okay, I'm not going to require a lot of Machiavellian understanding to understand how they arrived at the number 50%. It's halfway between all and nothing. They just made that number up. It's got no rational basis. And you have to say, well, we actually do put some thought into this. We have an accountant, they do an audit, they say, here's what you spend, it's chargeable. They lost you an accountant. They had no idea what you were talking about. So what finally passed in the House, we had another last-minute floor amendment from a friend of labor, self-identified, that would say this is great, and once you do this, then what you're going to have happen is everybody covered under the contract gets to vote on contract ratification, not just the members. Non-members would be able to vote on your contract too, since you're going to get an agency fee. They would have to cover it. We have to, we're already getting agency. We already have contracts we've been bargaining for decades with agency fee in them, and no sprechen Sie Deutsch. They just didn't care about that. So we didn't like that, and people said, well, this is, it's a kind of, I don't know if anyone's ever watched the BBC series Yes Minister. Yep. Yeah. So it's about some English politician, and his civil servant that he works closely with always knows exactly how to flip a vote. When the minister is about to do something, he compliments him on his political courage. And this means, what am I being courageous about? What's courageous about this? I don't like that. And he always go the other way. Anytime you're faced with the opportunity to be courageous, it's time to go that way. So folks complimented this way. That's a bold move to have these folks require everyone to vote on a contract, even when they've explicitly decided not to be a member, and they can go to the meeting and sign a card and become a member and then legitimately vote on the contract, but you want to go ahead and allow them to continue to. That's very bold. So he withdrew that amendment. But put a very strange provision which would require all existing unions that have agency shop, that have fair share, to put a vote to the membership, not to the membership, that would require it to have a vote of all of the people covered in the bargaining unit on whether to allow non-members to ratify the contract. Wow. It's weird. Wow. Now, fortunately, the people that wrote the language don't understand how anything works. They didn't understand they could have really put it to us. They could have said at your annual, they could have really put it to us. If they had asked us to draft it if they had asked us to draft it, we could have told them how to really put our thumbs in the vice. But they didn't, so it's not gonna be that hard to do. You have to say, okay, at our next board meeting, at our next monthly meeting, we're gonna have this discussion, we're gonna vote on it. And I don't know, maybe y'all are living in a radical 1930s world, but it's not that easy to get great turnout. It's not that easy to get a lot of non-members to come to your board meeting, not the board meetings I go to. And so you put it on the agenda and you say, okay, if non-members really want to start coming to the monthly union member meeting and tell us why they think we should let them vote on the contract, even though they're going to refuse to sign a membership card, let's go ahead and have that discussion. That's a fine discussion to have. We'd like to see them squirm and then leave, or at least sign a card. We'll get the members, but we'll deal with that as it comes. It's not going to be that, not that onerous, but the intent is there. It's like, thank you for the malicious intent. It's a good thing you don't know what you're doing, but your intent is clear, and that's helpful. So those are interesting. Those are kind of interesting things, and forgive me for being somewhat in the weeds. We're just in the last couple of weeks of our session, and so it's all you can sort of think about. The only other thing I wanted to put out a little bit about the direction I think that we're going to start moving. And Vermont is a very strange state. I'm not sure that it's as strange as New Hampshire. You got 400?
Yes.
State rep 400?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Well, how many? You must have, and I know that you guys did a mailing, because I talked to Kurt about it, or Laura, somebody. You guys did mailings of sample ballots to every district? That's amazing. We have 150, and I thought people think that's ludicrous enough because you look at the voter file and you see there's 400 votes cast, in some of these districts. I mean, it's a small number, but 400 is outlandish. How many of y'all are reps? Exactly, it's the same thing in Vermont. We should change that, and so we've been thinking about how to do that. And also thinking about community engagement. We're hearing a lot these days about President of my International, Randy Weingarten, talks a lot about community engagement. She pushes it everywhere she goes. Rich Trumka's on this message, and I think it's the right message for us to be on, and that's the way to win. And so we've been thinking about doing listening meetings around the state at the end of the session to talk about what went well, what didn't, what people have to say about things. But the question, is where do we do them? The natural inclination, as anybody that puts on any events or talks to any members, would be to put them on in places where we know we can get good turnout. I don't like to put something on and have 4 people there. I'd like to have 30 people there or 20 people there. But that's exactly where we don't need them. The place where we need the meetings is the places where maybe there's no where we don't have anybody good in office, where it's hard to get people to run for office. That's where we need to have the meetings. So we can get some activity where there's no activity there. And how do we know where those places are? Well, it so happens that the Vermont Democratic Party has reorganization this year. And so they have to re-elect town committees all over the place, and they're going to be doing this in September. And they're asking, on one hand, the party is asking for help, and on the other hand, the people that ran on the party's with the party behind their name are passing this kind of legislation that we've just been talking about, not knowing what they're doing. So it's no wonder, like, I'm getting slapped with one hand and they're shaking my hand with the other one. It's very strange. So you put these things together and you see, how can we broaden our community engagement program and at the same time broaden our electoral capacity and move the needle in some areas. So you put these two things together, and I'm thinking, why don't we target our community engagement, our listening tour, in towns where there's a low level of political engagement? It sounds like turnout suicide, but it's organizational growth is how I look at it. So if we target meetings in places where we know we probably could get somebody elected if there's an organization behind them, if there were just a few people in the towns to put up good people to run for office, we could win them. Because in Vermont, it's probably this way in rural New Hampshire also, the vast majority of candidates, some portion, I'll say that, some portion of the candidates, their campaign consists of getting enough names on the ballot to run unopposed in the primary, and a lot of people in Vermont run as an RD, a Republican/Democrat. That's all it takes to win in some districts, because there's no one against them. I bet we can pick up some of those, and we can start changing this story, and at the same time, deepen our community roots in some of these areas. So that's kind of what I'm trying to think of, how to put these two things together. We need more electoral capacity. We know that we need more, we need to broaden and deepen our community engagement, our community roots, and how to make these things work together, because we don't have a ton of capacity. We have me, I'm out most of my time is taken up with AFT stuff, but AFL-CIO gets a big chunk of my time, and we have one staffer who's the chief cook and bottle washer, so we have to do it all with fairly low, a fairly low amount of staff element. And that ties into the last mid-year, which is that we have a really good relationship with the Jobs and Justice Affiliate, Vermont Workers Center. They ran a Healthcare as a Human Right campaign and helped us pass, or they didn't help us pass, they were the driver that brought it over the finish line, single-payer healthcare in Vermont, which if it goes into effect in a couple of years is going to obviate a number of the difficulties in the Affordable Care Act that you all just got done hearing about. But they're very strong, they're the number one game in town with community engagement in the state. We have a good relationship with them. We're in the process of talking with them about affiliating with the State Labor Council and also using them, moving Working America membership among their list. Vermont Workers Center has a very list of 10,000 or so strong activists. We move Working America membership among that list, and all of a sudden we have a C3 organization which can't get involved in electoral work as affiliate members in the AFL-CIO, which can get involved in political work, and we can be the political electoral wing, and they can be the C3 messaging wing, and we could really find a good way to work together and make some real difference here. And I think that's the only way to go. It's controversial. It's not easy. You definitely have pushback among some members who don't like all of their agenda. But if we're going to limit ourselves to talking with people with whom we share 100% of our agenda, we're just going to be looking in the mirror all day and continuing to be sad that our membership numbers are getting smaller and smaller, and we have less and less capacity. And I don't think that's a way. I don't think that's a way to win. People are feeling pretty desperate these days. At least they are in Vermont. People are feeling pretty desperate about the state of things, and I think this is the best way out that I know of.